The voice came from the teleportation formation. Everyone looked over and saw starlight flickering there. It didn't take long for a man in a green and white robe to walk out from it. Zhang Yuechen, Hua Tianyuan and the others' faces fell when they saw him, and a trace of fear appeared in their eyes. Because Zhang Yuechen was ranked at the 13th position on the dragon rankings. The 13th, Hua Tianyuan was only ranked 15th. Even though it was just 2 ranks, the gap between them was huge. It was extremely difficult to rise further after entering the top 15. For example, he'd been at the 15th position for many years. He'd thought about rising further, but he'd never succeeded. Not to mention rising to the 14th, he'd almost lost his current position on many occasions. So, Hua Tianyuan and the others revealed vigilant expressions on their faces when they saw Zhang Yuechen. Hua Tianyuan? Zhang Yuechen's gaze descended onto Hua Tianyuan, and then a cold smile curled up on the corners of his mouth. I never expected you to be quite fast. You even brought others with you, right? Based on your strength, wouldn't you be giving your life away if you didn't bring others with you? Hua Tianyuan spoke indifferently. You're quite fast yourself. I had to. Zhang Yuechen smiled. Presently, countless are rushing to the radiant dimension. He gazed at Yang Yi and continued. He's Yang Yi, right? Hua Tianyu replied. Indeed. Zhang Yuechen smiled. First comes first serve. Are all of you going to kill him or not? If you don't, then his head is mine. Hua Tianyuan glanced at Yang Yi, and his gaze stopped on Yang Ye's sword. He fell silent for a while before he shook his head. Take it if you want. If Zhang Yuechen wasn't here, then he would think of taking the risk. However, Zhang Yuechen was here. So even if they could kill Yang Yi, Zhang Yuechen might still take Yang Ye's head. Moreover, Yang Yi was no ordinary expert. Even Zhang Yuechen would have to exhaust a huge amount of effort to kill Yang Yi, and it would be better for his group if both of them were injured in the battle. So, he decided to withdraw for now and allow Zhang Yuechen to fight Yang Yi. Then I won't refuse the offer. Zhang Yuechen smiled. I know what you're planning. You want us both to be injured in the battle and then reap the benefits. However, you're bound to be disappointed. Because do you think I would need to use much strength to deal with him? Hua Tianyuan remained silent. Zhang Yuechen chuckled and gazed at Yang Yi. I never expected your head to be worth so much. 5 permits. TSK, TSK. I'll use 1 and sell the rest. It'll sell for a few million divine crystals at the very least. So, Yang Yi suddenly interrupted Zhang Yuechen and asked, how many divine crystals have you brought with you? Zhang Yuechen's eyes narrowed slightly. He was just about to speak when Yang Yi added, forget it. I'll see for myself. As soon as Yang Yi finished speaking, he drew his sword. OM. An ear-piercing howl of the sword suddenly resounded through space. And then the space in an area of 5,000 kilometers cracked apart. In an instant, the space in the entire area shattered and formed a pitch-black hole. Everything seemed to have stopped. After some time passed, the space there gradually returned to normal. 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, 13,000. A voice suddenly resounded here. Huan Tianyun and the others were stunned for quite a long time before they looked towards where Zhang Yuechen had been standing. At this moment, Zhang Yuechen was nowhere to be seen, and it caused them to be stunned again before turning to look at Yang Yi. At this moment, Yang Yi was counting while holding a spatial ring in his hand. 15,000, 17,000, 20,000. A short while passed before Yang Yi nodded. Not bad. 20,000 divine crystals. Hua Tianyuan and the others' expressions weren't solemn anymore. They were quite unsightly instead. Moreover, there wasn't just shock in their eyes. There was dense fear in there as well. A single swing of the sword. Yang Yi had killed Zhang Yuechen, the 13th on the dragon rankings, with a single swing of his sword. Just one swing. Hua Tianyuan and the others were beyond shocked, especially Su Daoming who'd fought Yang Yi earlier. At this moment, he didn't feel shocked, he felt horrified. Just think about it. If Yang Yi had executed that attack as soon as the battle began, then he would probably be dead by now. Not to mention him, even 10 experts like him couldn't resist that attack. Yang Yi put the spatial ring away, and then he sheathed the sword precursor again. After that, he gazed at Hua Tianyuan's group. Does any one of you want to go next? They didn't speak. Who would dare to? No one would. Even the strongest amongst them, Hua Tianyuan, would dare not. What a joke! Yang Yi had even been able to annihilate Jiang Wuchen with a single swing of the sword. So how could they resist such an attack? No one. Yang Yi glanced at them and said, "Then I'm leaving." Yang Yi started walking off while he spoke. This time, Yang Yi didn't leave so swiftly as he'd done before. He walked slowly as if he was waiting for them to pursue him. Are we really going to let him go? Su Daoming spoke in a low voice. The reason he could kill Jiang Yuechen was his sword and that sword technique. It was so terrifying, so it definitely exhausts an extraordinarily huge amount of energy. If I'm not wrong, he doesn't have any profound energy left or is suffering from backlash. We'll definitely be able to kill him if we attack now. So long as we kill him, all of us will be able to obtain a permit. The permits. Their eyes lit up when they heard permits being mentioned. They'd come to the radiant dimension for the sake of the permits to enter the large world. Now, they just had to kill Yang Yi and all of them would be able to obtain a permit. In other words, the permits were right in front of them. Hua Tianyuan and the others exchanged glances, and then they nodded and decided to take the risk. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly stopped moving. Hua Tianyuan and the others, who were about to attack, were instantly stunned on the spot, and then they didn't just discard their intentions to attack, they even became completely vigilant. They still remembered Yang Ye's attack clearly. Yang Yi turned to look at them and said, "All of you've come here to kill the hall masters of the Nether Pavilion to gain permits. What I'd like to ask is, do all of you even know anything about the Nether Pavilion?" A moment of silence ensued before Hua Tianyuan spoke in a low voice. "A diamond rank power. Every single one of their hall masters are geniuses with extraordinary strength." Yang Yi asked, "What else?" Hua Tianyuan replied, "That's all." Yang Yi was astounded. "That's all?" Hua Tianyuan replied with a question. "Isn't that all?" Yang Ye's face was stiff for quite some time, and then he nodded. "I understand now." Now, he finally understood why Yi Xuanhuan, whom the pig-riding woman killed earlier, and all these fellows before him had dared to come and take the heads of those women from the Nether Pavilion. Why? Because they knew nothing about the Nether Pavilion's strength. Their understanding towards it was only limited to it being a diamond rank power with hall masters that possess extraordinary strength. That was all. If it was based on that alone, then the Nether Pavilion really wasn't terrifying at all. But was that the truth? It was definitely not. The Nether Pavilion wasn't from the lower dimensions. Even though Yang Yi didn't know why they were staying here, he had no doubt that the powers of the lower dimension or experts like these fellows were definitely nothing before the Nether Pavilion. Just Blind Maiden was sufficient to obliterate them. However, they were a threat as well. Of course, just their group was definitely unable to threaten Nether Maiden and the others. But the geniuses and experts from all over were converging to the radiant dimension. Once Blind Maiden was locked in battle, these monstrous geniuses wouldn't just be a small threat to Nether Maiden and the others, they would be a huge threat. Even if the others were ignored, just the joint forces of these few fellows before him were even sufficient to make him flee from them. Yet they were even more geniuses rushing over. Perhaps there would even be some old geezers. After all, that permit to enter the large world was really quite tempting to them. Besides those old geezers, the experts of the large world would definitely have other backup plans. Because those forces who intended to act against the Nether Pavilion were definitely aware of its true strength. Actually, Nether Maiden and the others should have left. After all, it was best to temporarily avoid conflict at a time like this. If they left, these fellows would definitely be unable to locate them. However, they didn't leave. Yang Yi naturally didn't think that they were fools. As far as he was concerned, there was definitely a reason why they were staying in the radiant dimension. Because he remembered Nether Maiden saying that the hall masters weren't at the radiant dimension in the beginning, yet most of them were there now. Yang Yi remained silent for a few breaths of time, and then he suddenly frowned while his face turned slightly pale. "I can't stay longer." He'd executed the true form of Heaven Ren twice, so the profound energy within him had dried up while his physical strength had been exhausted to its limits. He was just forcefully supporting himself up, and he would definitely be in trouble if this continued. However, Yang Yi didn't leave right away. He gazed at Hua Tianyuan's group and smiled. "Are all of you going to attack or not?" Hua Tianyuan and the others' eyelids twitched, but they remained silent. "If you don't, then I'm going to." Yang Ye's face suddenly became icy cold. He grabbed the hilt of his sword, accumulated strength, and was about to draw his sword. Hua Tianyuan and the others' expressions changed drastically at the sight of this, and they shot around 3 kilometers back. After that, they formed profound energy barriers around themselves and jointly fortified the space before them. Yang Yi didn't walk backwards but started walking towards them instead. He had a ferocious expression on his face while madness filled his eyes. "Come, tell me which one of you wants to die. I guarantee that I'll eliminate you with a single swing of my sword. It won't hurt at all." He naturally wanted to leave, but he couldn't. Once he tried to leave, it was very likely that they would join forces against him. There was a balance between him and their group right now. If he were to take a step back, then they would definitely take a step forward. The only way out of this situation was to force them to leave. Hua Tianyuan and the others were almost unable to stand still on the spot when they saw Yang Yi walking towards them. That sword technique of Yang Ye's was impossible to resist. Just as Yang Yi had said, that attack would kill anyone it was launched at. A moment of silence ensued before Hua Tianyuan spoke in a low voice. "Let's retreat for now." Right when they were about to retreat, a clear and melodious voice suddenly resounded. "Draw your sword. Go on and draw it. I really want to see how someone without any profound energy left is capable of executing a sword technique." Hua Tianyuan and the others immediately stopped moving when they heard the voice. Meanwhile, Yang Yi was at a loss for words. "Now that's embarrassing. Now that's embarrassing." Yang Ye's face twitched slightly, and then he turned and looked towards the teleportation formation. He saw a woman walking out slowly from there. She wore a tight black dress, so it vividly revealed her curves, especially the huge lumps on her chest. Her dress held tightly to them and made them seem like iron balls. Even though her skin wasn't exposed at all, it made others have the urge to rush over and grab them. Her appearance couldn't be described as drop-dead gorgeous, but it was very charming. Especially her huge eyes. They seemed capable of sucking others in, and they made others unable to resist from taking a few more glances at them. Yang Yi was naturally not interested in admiring her. He was thinking about what he should do. He didn't recognize her, but he had no doubt that she was definitely here for the permit. Since she was able to immediately see through the state he was in, it was sufficient to prove how strong she was. Fight them? 1 against 6? If he could draw his sword 6 more times, he would definitely do that. However, not to mention drawing it again, even walking would be a problem if this went on for a while longer. Moreover, more and more would definitely be rushing over, and all of them would definitely possess some level of ability. Obviously, they wouldn't let him live. He was worth 5 permits. His head was much more valuable than Nether Maiden and the others. Moreover, he was weak right now. So, could anyone resist such temptation? "You aren't drawing your sword?" Meanwhile, the woman suddenly smiled, and then she gazed at Hua Tianyuan. "He doesn't have any profound energy left. Moreover, if I'm not wrong, he's just standing on sheer willpower. He'll definitely die if you attack. 5 permits are right in front of you. If you don't want it, then I'll take it." Hua Tianyuan and the others gazed at her with vigilance. They didn't recognize her, but they didn't dare to look down on her. There were countless experts in the world, and the consequence of underestimating anyone might be death. It was something they'd understood a very long time ago. The woman in a black dress suddenly grinned. "What? You dare not take it?" Hua Tianyuan laughed coldly. "What a plan! You want us to test him and see if he has other trump cards, and then you can reap the rewards. Needless to say, it's a really good plan. Perhaps Yang Yi really was just holding on with sheer willpower. However, could anyone guarantee that he had no other trump cards? Moreover, what if he wasn't? What if he could still draw his sword? It wasn't completely impossible. because he'd been observing Yang Yi, and Yang Yi was too calm. It felt like Yang Yi was completely without any fear. It was very understandable that both Hua Tianyuan's group and the woman didn't dare to rashly attack Yang Yi. If Yang Yi was an ordinary person, then would someone in the large world pay such a high price for his head? No matter how precious a permit was, they had to be alive to use it. Her expression didn't change at all when Hua Tianyuan exposed her intentions, and she just chuckled. Since you refuse to act, then his head belongs to me. Lien Suyao. Lien Suyao. Hua Tianyuan and the others' expressions changed. Hua Tianyuan stared fixedly at her and said, "You're that Lien Suyao who killed 3 semi-deities within 100 breaths of time." A smile curled up on the corners of her mouth. "You've heard of me?" Hua Tianyuan and the others became vigilant when they heard her admit it. There were thousands of worlds. While a genius could reign supreme in his or her own world, that same genius might be nothing when placed in the outside world. Only those whose names were known by other geniuses were the true experts. Obviously, Lien Suyao was such a person. The reason she was famous was because she'd fought 3 semi-deities on her own, and all 3 of them died in battle. Moreover, it had taken less than 100 breaths of time. She'd made a name for herself through that battle. Even though there were 5 of them in Hua Tianyuan's group, they didn't dare act carelessly at all when facing such a monstrous genius. However, they didn't fear her as well. They weren't newbies. Perhaps they couldn't defeat her in single combat, but if they joined forces, then she would definitely have to fear them. Otherwise, she wouldn't have tried to use such schemes and would have just asked them to fuck off. Yang Yi had a gloomy expression on his face, or it should be described as being quite unsightly instead. He felt that he had really bad luck. He'd just come here to send them off, yet he'd trapped himself here instead. One after the other were arriving here, and each was stronger than the last. Perhaps someone else would arrive just a while later, and then that person would look for trouble with him as well. Actually, there was no need to wait for later. That woman called Lien Suyao intended to look for trouble with him as well. Lien Suyao walked slowly in Yang Ye's direction and smiled. "They're paying such a huge price for your head. I'm really quite curious. Why is your head so valuable? Is it made from divine crystals?" Yang Yi spoke indifferently. "You want it?" Lien Suyao chuckled. "Don't act so calm. I'm no scaredy cat. I would really have to be fearful if you were at your prime. But I can fight 10 of you if you're in your current state." As soon as she finished speaking, her figure suddenly became translucent, and then countless fine needle-shaped rays of light flashed out from the space around Yang Yi. After that, they shot towards Yang Yi. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while ferocity appeared in them. The tiny vortex revolved within him. However, Yang Yi suddenly seemed stunned, and then he relaxed. Bang! Numerous explosions resounded. Around 10 breaths of time passed before all the rays of light vanished, and then Yang Yi appeared before them. Yang Yi was completely unharmed. Lien Suyao, Hua Tianyuan, and the others' faces had become gloomy because someone had assisted Yang Yi. Who was it? Lien Suyao and the others didn't know, but Yang Yi did. It was Boundary Maiden whom he'd met once in the past. A barrier had appeared around him when he was about to attack. She was here, but she hadn't shown herself. "Get the fuck out here." Suddenly, Lien Suyao's face became cold, and she stretched out her hand. In an instant, the space in an area of over 5 kilometers rippled violently, but it only took an instant for the rippling space here to calm down. A fierce gaze flashed through Lien Suyao's eyes as she raised her palm before pressing it down. Shatter! Bang! A loud explosion resounded as the space in an area of 30 kilometers collapsed, causing pitch-black darkness to instantly cover the surroundings. After that, numerous explosions resounded from within the black hole. Around a few breaths of time later, the space here was repaired. Yang Yi appeared before them, and there was a woman in a green dress by his side. She was naturally Boundary Maiden. The Nether Pavilion. A cold smile curled up on the corners of Lien Suyao's lips. "I knew this assignment wouldn't be easy. As expected, just one of the Hall Masters is already so strong. If all the other Hall Masters are here..." "TSK, TSK." As she spoke, She was frequently sizing up the surroundings and seemed rather vigilant. Obviously, she was afraid that more hall masters of the Nether Pavilion had come. Boundary Maiden paid no attention to Lien Suyao and just gazed at Yang Yi instead. Why didn't you leave? She'd helped him earlier so that he could leave, but Yang Yi hadn't. Yang Yi shook his head. I can't leave you here by yourself. Boundary Maiden was slightly stunned. And then she sized him up and said, Your profound energy has dried up and your physical strength has been exhausted beyond its limits. So you can't leave, even with how thick-skinned Yang Yi was. His face couldn't help but turn red when she exposed him like that. He had wanted to leave, but just as she said, he couldn't anymore. If he didn't possess shocking willpower, he wouldn't even have the ability to stand right now. Heavenrend always killed its target. However, the consumption that accompanied it wasn't something he couldn't really endure. The situation here was in a stalemate. Lien Suyao seemed to be worried about something and didn't attack, and it was the same for Hua Tianyuan's group. At this moment, they'd witnessed how terrifying a hall master of the Nether Pavilion was, and they'd truly stopped underestimating their opponents now. Moreover, they were also worried that Lien Suyao would act against them. As for Lien Suyao, she was actually vigilant against Hua Tianyuan's group as well. She wouldn't fear any one of them in single combat, but they were in a group. Their strengths weren't the slightest bit weaker to 5 semi-deities. It was exactly because they were apprehensive about each other that none of them attacked. Yang Yi asked, Only you came? Yang Yi had naturally asked this question via voice transmission. Boundary Maiden replied, What do you think? She'd replied via voice transmission as well. Yang Yi was astounded. They have so many on their side, yet they made you come alone? You're mistaken. She continued, I didn't come here from the radiant dimension. I was rushing back from somewhere else and just happened to bump into you. So I lent you a hand. They are in the radiant dimension, so they are utterly unaware that we've encountered enemies here. Yang Yi was stunned, and he was stunned for a long time before he gulped. Nether Maiden and the others don't know that we're in trouble. In other words, it's the 2 of us against the 6 of them. She spoke indifferently. It's 1 against the 6 of them. Yang Yi asked, You're going to fight them on your own? She glanced at him and replied, You're going to fight them. I'm going to run. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Suddenly, Lien Suyao gazed at Hua Tianyuan and said, If we continue being apprehensive of each other, then it'll definitely result in 2 types of outcomes. The first is that they flee, and the second is that they keep us busy until more arrive. Regardless of which outcome it isn't beneficial to any of us. So, I think we can join forces and deal with them first. As for how we'll split the rewards, we can discuss it later. What do you think? Yang Ye's eyelids twitched when he heard her. She really is quite arrogant. She actually didn't even use a voice transmission when saying such things. After all, that was a form of contempt towards Yang Yi and Boundary Maiden. Boundary Maiden's face was calm and completely composed. Meanwhile, Hua Tianyuan remained silent for a few breaths of time, and then he nodded. All right. Actually, Lien Suyao had said exactly what he wanted to say. When she heard him agree, Lien Suyao immediately said, Attack! As soon as she gave the word, her figure vanished on the spot. Yang Yi is weak. Take his head first. Hua Tianyuan's voice resounded in the minds of the other 4 in his group, and then they charged towards Boundary Maiden and Yang Yi. Why did they want to take Yang Ye's head first? It was very simple. It was because Yang Ye's head was the most valuable. The price on Yang Ye's head was the highest, and it was more valuable than a hall master of Nether Pavilion. So long as they took Yang Ye's head, each of them could obtain a permit. In that way, they would have accomplished their goal. Moreover, Yang Yi was clearly in a weakened state, so it really was the best time to kill him. Yang Yi was Lien Suyao's target as well. Similarly, Yang Ye's head was the most valuable and easiest to take. So long as she got his head, she would turn around and leave. The experts of the Nether Pavilion weren't ordinary, and she wasn't confident in her ability to defeat this hall master before her. However, she was confident in her ability to kill Yang Yi right now. Yang Ye's face fell when he noticed that all their auras had locked onto him. Needless to say, Mo Xiaoling's plan was a really good one. After all, with those permits as a reward for his life, wouldn't the experts of the lower dimension pursue him all day and night? Moreover, it wouldn't just be the younger generation, even some of the older generation would have probably started to target him by now. Of course, he didn't have to worry about them for now. He had to worry about the people in front of him. Yang Yi turned to shoot a glance at Boundary Maiden, yet he noticed that she seemed to have no intention to lend him a hand. Yang Yi fell silent for an instant before he slowly clenched his fists and started to circulate the Stellar Ward technique. He was naturally not going to execute the Stellar Ward technique, and he was just drawing down stellar energy into his body. Even if it wasn't suitable to draw stellar energy into his body now. After all, his body had been exhausted to its limits. So, if he were to forcefully utilize more strength, then it wouldn't just be exhaustion that he experienced. However, he had no other choice. Boundary Maiden wasn't skilled in single combat. Not to mention that there were 6 experts in front of them. As for Xianxia, he tried to call Xianxia earlier, but that fellow didn't reply at all. Yang Yi didn't know whether Xianxia was still digesting the Black Dragon's energy, or if Xianxia was sleeping. In any case, he was very well aware that he couldn't rely on that fellow for now. Right when Yang Yi was about to draw stellar energy into his body, a pillar of light shot up from below. It was extremely swift and instantly arrived before Yang Yi and Boundary Maiden, and then it shot towards Lien Suyao and the others. This unexpected attack caused their expressions to change. However, they didn't seem to panic, and they simultaneously attacked and instantly shattered the pillar of light. However, once the pillar of light had been destroyed, Yang Yi and Boundary Maiden had vanished into the distance. Go after them. As soon as she finished speaking, Lien Suyao tapped her right foot down and appeared 30 kilometers away. Her speed was shocking. Hua Tianyuan and the others didn't hesitate, and they chased after Yang Yi and Boundary Maiden. Lien Suyao and the others raised their speeds to their limits, and they were closing the gap between them and Yang Ye's group. Boundary Maiden was by Yang Ye's side, and she was holding him right now. There was another woman not too far ahead of them. Yang Yi had met her in the past. Not only had he met her, he'd even gotten into conflict with her. It was Light Maiden. Yang Yi asked, "You notified them?" Boundary Maiden nodded. Yang Yi asked, "Why has only one of you come here? If Nether Maiden, Oblivion Maiden, and the pig-riding woman came as well, then their side wouldn't have to fear Lien Suyao's group. It was even to the extent that it wouldn't be difficult for them to annihilate Lien Suyao's group." Boundary Maiden spoke solemnly. "We have to return as soon as possible." Yang Yi asked solemnly, "What exactly is going on?" At this moment, he noticed that Boundary Maiden had a very serious expression on her face. Boundary Maiden shook her head and remained silent. Yang Yi glanced at Boundary Maiden and didn't ask about it again. The Nether Pavilion was a mystery to him, and he knew that they were definitely doing something on the Radiant Dimension. However, he didn't know exactly what they were doing. However, it seemed like it was definitely not anything minor. Otherwise, it wouldn't have made the experts of the large world act against them. Yang Yi and Boundary Maiden arrived in the sky above the Radiant Dimension under Light Maiden's escort. However, Lien Suyao and the others had followed them here. Yang Yi was about to speak when the woman who rode the pig and Nether Maiden appeared before them. The pig-riding woman gazed at Boundary Maiden and said, "Welcome back." Boundary Maiden nodded. "I'm not too late, right?" The pig-riding woman replies, "Not really." Boundary Maiden didn't speak another word, and she just shot down and vanished. Once Boundary Maiden left, the pig-riding woman's gaze descended onto Yang Yi. She sized him up and said, "You really are tenacious." Yang Ye's face darkened. He was about to speak when she continued, "Actually, this is our own business, so you don't have to join in. It's a very complicated matter. Even that woman, lady, who helped you that day isn't qualified to interfere in this matter. So," Yang Yi laughed bitterly and replied, "I know, but it's not my decision now. I have to even if I don't want to. Someone up there wants to kill me too, and the price on my head is higher than all of you. It's 5 permits. I'm their number 1 target right now. All of you are only their secondary targets. 5 permits. The corners of her eyes twitched slightly. She gazed at Yang Yi for quite some time before she said, "Your ability to cause trouble is truly extraordinary. Someone from the lower dimensions actually has an enemy in the large world. How did you accomplish that?" Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Meanwhile, Nether Maiden said, "Go recuperate. She's still the nicest." Yang Yi nodded, and then he said, "I'll recover first." As soon as he finished speaking, he sat down cross-legged on the spot. And then he withdrew a huge pile of divine crystals and started absorbing the energy within them. Countless strands of spirit energy instantly appeared around Yang Yi before surging towards him. In the end, all of it was absorbed by the primordial pagoda within him, and it didn't take long for threads of violet energy to seep out from the primordial pagoda. After that, the violet energy was swiftly absorbed by Yang Ye's body. Meanwhile, Lien Suyao's group stopped when they saw Nether Maiden and the pig-riding young woman. They were vigilant. Their eyes were filled with vigilance as they gazed at Nether Maiden and the pig-riding young woman. All of them had experienced numerous battles, so they were able to discern danger with a single glance. The pig-riding young woman only had two other companions, Light Maiden and Nether Maiden. It was 3 against 6. A moment of silence ensued, and then Lien Suyao gazed at Hua Tianyuan. The latter pondered deeply for a moment, and then a cold glow flashed in his eyes as he nodded. "I'll deal with that woman on a pig. All of you deal with the other two." As soon as Lien Suyao finished speaking, she instantly vanished on the spot, and she was in front of the pig-riding young woman when her figure appeared once more. After that, she flipped her palm and slapped it forward. Space trembled before her palm, and it rumbled like thunder. The pig-riding woman's face was calm when she saw the palm slap towards her, and then she raised her hand and swung her club forward. Bang! 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 It didn't take long for Lien Suyao and the pig-riding woman to be locked in fierce combat. Meanwhile, Nether Maiden and Light Maiden were in battle with Hua Tianyuan's group. Even though Hua Tianyuan's side had the advantage in numbers, they didn't gain any advantage over Nether Maiden and Light Maiden. However, they cooperated very well, so Nether Maiden and Light Maiden couldn't gain an advantage as well. For a time, they were equally matched in battle. Something worthy of mentioning was that Light Maiden, Nether Maiden, and the pig-riding young woman were just quasi-emperors, whereas Hua Tianyuan and the others were voiders. Meanwhile, Yang Yi absorbed the energy from those divine crystals like a madman. As more and more spirit energy surged into him, his body gradually recovered. At the same time, some profound energy appeared within him. Yang Yi was observing the situation while he absorbed the spirit energy. His gaze descended onto the pig-riding woman and Lien Suyao. Yang Yi was really quite surprised by Lien Suyao, because she actually didn't fall into a disadvantaged position while in fierce battle with the pig-riding young woman. Moreover, she was growing stronger as the battle went on. The pig-riding young woman wasn't weak either, and her aura was growing stronger as the battle progressed. Needless to say, their battle was very exciting. Regardless of whether it was combat experience, utilization of techniques, both of them excelled in them. Could be said that it was a feast for the eyes. They were true monstrous geniuses. Regardless of whether it was Lien Suyao, Hua Tianyuan, or the others in their group, all of them were true monstrous geniuses. Yang Yi had traveled through the Radiant Dimension and Dark Hell Continent, but he'd rarely met any geniuses in the younger generation. In his heart, only the Hall Masters of the Nether Pavilion could go against him in the same realm of cultivation. However, the scene before him told him that there were many geniuses in this world who were on par with him. Most importantly, Hua Tianyuan and the others weren't even in the top 10 of the dragon rankings. If those below the top 10 were already so strong, wouldn't the top 5 be capable of killing deities? Yang Yi couldn't help but have a solemn expression on his face when he thought up to this point. Even though he didn't care about the permit to enter the large world, these fellows seemed to really desire it. In other words, the top 10 on the dragon rankings might come looking for him as well. Bang! Meanwhile, an explosion suddenly resounded from afar. Yang Yi looked up and saw that the pig-riding young woman and Lien Suyao had split up. Lien Suyao was staring at the pig-riding woman. "I never expected the Radiant Dimension to possess a genius like you." The pig-riding young woman glanced indifferently at Lien Suyao. "You're not bad yourself. Allow me to give you a piece of advice. Forget about the permits and get far away from the radiant dimension. Otherwise, it would be pointless even if you're given 100 permits. Because you wouldn't be alive to use them." Lien Suyao laughed coldly. "Are you that confident?" All geniuses were confident. Similarly, they were conceited on many occasions. The pig-riding young woman didn't speak another word. She just patted the huge white pig beneath her. "Roar!" The pig roared, and then it shot forward like a bolt of lightning. Once it arrived before Lien Suyao, the young woman's spiked club slammed straight down at Lien Suyao. Lien Suyao's eyes narrowed slightly. Her palms trembled slightly, and then she clenched them and slammed them forward. Bang! The space between them instantly collapsed, but it didn't take long for the space there to be repaired by the laws of the Heaven Dao. The pig-riding young woman and Lien Suyao exchanged glances in midair. Bang! The pig-riding young woman was just about to attack when an explosion that shook the sky resounded from below. At this moment, the heavens and the earth were trembling. Everyone stopped fighting and looked down. Meanwhile, Boundary Maiden's trembling voice came from below. "I can't suppress it much longer." "She can't suppress it much longer?" Yang Yi frowned while bewilderment filled his eyes. "What are they doing down there?" A moment of silence ensued, and then a pig-riding woman gazed at Light Maiden and said, "Seventh sister, you head down there." Light Maiden nodded slightly, and then she transformed into a ray of light that vanished down below. Only Nether Maiden and the pig-riding young woman remained here. 2 against 6. Lien Suyao and Hua Tianyuan exchanged glances. It didn't take long for them to simultaneously vanish on the spot. One of them charged at the pig-riding young woman and the other charged at Nether Maiden. Besides that, Su Daoming and the others followed closely behind Hua Tianyuan. 5 against 1. Yang Yi suddenly stood up. He would naturally not just watch as 5 of them ganged up on Nether Maiden. However, Nether Maiden spoke abruptly when Yang Yi was about to attack. "Recover for now. Listen to me." As soon as she finished speaking, Nether Maiden stretched her hand forward. Swoosh! A pitch-black iron chain shot forward like a bolt of lightning, and she grabbed it and swung it horizontally. In an instant, the entire sky was covered in images of chains, and they enveloped Hua Tianyuan's group. She fought 5 on her own. Yang Yi clenched his hands and was considering if he should lend her a hand. Suddenly, the pig-riding young woman said, "Stop watching and quickly recover. You'll have a chance to help later." As soon as she finished speaking, she paid no further attention to Yang Yi and just shot towards Lien Suyao. Yang Yi remained silent for an instant, and then he sat down cross-legged on the ground. He'd recovered by around 30% now, and his profound energy had recovered by around 20%. So, even if he joined the battle, he would be of no help. The important matter at hand was to recuperate. Around 15 minutes later, Lien Suyao turned to glance at Nether Maiden and Hua Tianyuan's group. Her face instantly turned gloomy when she saw that they still hadn't been able to kill Nether Maiden. She'd thought that since they were fighting her 5 against 1, they would be able to kill her quickly. However, she hadn't expected that they would have failed to kill her swiftly and were even locked in battle with her. Lien Suyao was silent for an instant, and then her figure flashed and dodged the pig-riding young woman's attack before she said, "Hua Tianyuan, if we continue holding back, then not to mention 1 permit, even leaving with our lives would be a problem. Even if we can drag out the battle and kill them, we wouldn't be able to leave the radiant dimension. You should be very well aware of how many are rushing towards here right now." Hua Tianyuan glanced at Lien Suyao and said, "Then let's stop holding back." "All right." Lien Suyao nodded. She stretched her palms out flat, and then clasped them together. After that, a terrifying aura surged out from within her. As soon as that happened, she suddenly pushed her intertwined hands forward in the pig-riding young woman's direction. Bang! A strand of invisible force rippled out from her arms, and it shattered the space before it. The pig-riding young woman's expression remained calm and composed, and she just slammed her spiked club forward. Bang! A muffled explosion resounded, and then the pig-riding young woman was blasted 300 m away. But it only took a moment for her to shoot forward like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, she arrived before Lien Suyao, and then she swiftly slammed her spiked club down at Lien Suyao. Bang! A muffled explosion resounded as Lien Suyao was blasted around 1 kilometer back. Lien Suyao's face became gloomy. She didn't waste her breath and just immediately charged forward at the pig-riding young woman. Meanwhile, Hua Tianyuan and the others stopped holding back. They executed their best techniques, causing Nether Maiden to start being suppressed. Yang Ye's face fell at the sight of this, and he stood up slowly before walking slowly in Hua Tianyuan's group's direction. At the same time, the ancient sheath appeared in his right grasp while a sword was sheathed within it. Hua Tianyuan and the others noticed Yang Yi walking in their direction. Their expressions changed immediately, and they stopped attacking. Their expressions changed once more when they saw Yang Yi holding that sword in his grasp. And then Nether Maiden watched with bewilderment as all of them retreated over 3 kilometers back. At this moment, Lien Suyao had stopped attacking as well. She stared fixedly at Yang Yi. Besides seriousness, there was a trace of fear in her eyes. Yang Yi walked over to Nether Maiden's side, glanced at Hua Tianyuan's group and said, "I haven't recovered completely, but I can still draw my sword once. Which one of you wants to try it?" The corners of Hua Tianyuan and the others' eyes twitched. Who would do it? Who would dare to do it? In any case, they wouldn't dare to do that. They hadn't forgotten how Yang Yi had killed Jiang Yuechen with a single swing of his sword. When he saw them remain quiet, Yang Yi gazed at Lien Suyao. "Will you?" Lien Suyao's eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold glow flickered within them. However, she didn't speak. It felt extremely dangerous to her. She was very well aware that she would die or suffer heavy injuries if she tried to resist that attack. Regardless of whether she died or suffered injuries, it wasn't an outcome that she wanted. Yang Yi didn't act overbearingly. He nodded right away and said, "Looks like all of you need time to think. That's fine, I'll give you that time. You can have as much time as you like. Think slowly. I'm right here, and I'll absolutely not leave. You can step forward once you've decided which one of you will do it." Hua Tianyuan and the others' faces became quite unsightly when they heard Yang Yi. Being deterred by a single person was naturally extremely humiliating to them. However, if they didn't accept it, then they might have to lose their lives instead. Hua Tianyuan and the others didn't attack, so Yang Yi naturally didn't as well. He was keeping it to threaten them. It would kill someone if he swung his sword, but then it would pose no further threat to the others who were still alive. At that time, they would really fight desperately with their lives on the line. Since both sides didn't attack, they were at a stalemate. The pig-riding young woman came over to Yang Yi and Nether Maiden's side. She sized up Yang Yi and nodded. She didn't say anything because she felt that there was no need to say anything when it came to Yang Yi. Yang Yi asked solemnly, "What exactly are all of you doing?" Presently, even an idiot would be able to realize that they were doing something in the radiant dimension, and it was definitely not anything minor. A moment of silence ensued before Nether Maiden spoke in a low voice. "You'll find out in a while." "Fine." Yang Yi nodded and asked, "Where's Blind Maiden? Did she not return?" The pig-riding young woman gazed at Yang Yi and asked, "You know our third sister?" Yang Yi nodded slightly, and then he briefly described how he met Blind Maiden on Dark Hell Continent. No wonder she hadn't shown herself throughout these years. The pig-riding young woman spoke softly, and then she fell silent. Yang Yi asked, "Did she not return? If Blind Maiden were here, wouldn't all of the experts here be nothing but trash?" Nether Maiden replied, "She got here a long time ago." Yang Yi was puzzled. "Then is she not going to help?" Nether Maiden shook her head slightly. "She already has. If she hadn't, then it wouldn't be these fellows that were here right now. It would be the experts of the large world." "I understand now." Yang Yi nodded. Obviously, she was dealing with even more formidable experts, and they had to deal with these fellows who were weaklings in Blind Maiden's eyes. Yang Yi asked, "Around how long will it take for you to complete what you're doing here?" Nether Maiden spoke in a low voice. 3 days. The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched. 3 days. In other words, they had to stand on guard here for 3 days. There would definitely be countless experts that rushed over here in the next 3 days. Moreover, they would definitely get stronger as more arrived. Xianxia asked, "How many of you are here?" Nether Maiden replied, "6. Xianxia asked, "Will the others rush back here too? For example, your eldest sister and second sister?" Nether Maiden shook her head. "I don't know if our eldest sister will be back, but second sister will definitely not be coming." Xianxia was puzzled. "Why?" She replied in a low voice, "You'll find out soon." Xianxia felt speechless. Meanwhile, the pig-riding young woman suddenly said, "If you're afraid, you can just leave." Xianxia couldn't help but frown. He gazed at her and said, "Saying that is quite tasteless." He was quite displeased right now. Was he afraid? Would he still be standing here if he were afraid? Even though they were targeting him as well, could anyone find him if he hid himself? The reason he was still here was because of Nether Maiden and the others, because they'd stepped forward and helped him when the 4 great clans and the Alliance of Guardians besieged White Deer Academy. Now that they were in trouble, how could he just leave? But the pig-riding young woman had spoken such words, so it naturally displeased him quite a bit. Nether Maiden glanced at the pig-riding young woman and said, "Why speak such hurtful words?" The pig-riding young woman puckered her lips and said, "I can't even joke around?" Xianxia shook his head. He wasn't really angry. He knew that she was quite a casual and careless person after all. Xianxia didn't linger on the matter and looked up at Hua Tianyuan's group. 3 days. In other words, we have to stand on guard here for 3 days. Nether Maiden nodded. Yes. Xianxia asked, "What if we can't?" Nether Maiden spoke in a low voice that carried an indisputable tone. "We have to, no matter what." Xianxia was about to speak when Nether Maiden gazed at him. "I didn't want you to get mixed up in this matter. However, it's pointless to say that now. You're strong, and you'll definitely be a huge help to us if you stay. Just remember that no matter what happens, you can't allow anyone to head down there and disturb them. Please." Xianxia looked down below. The area below was enveloped by a mysterious force, so others couldn't discern the situation there at all. Xianxia remained silent for an instant before he nodded. "I'll try my best." He knew that what Boundary Maiden and the others were doing down there was extremely important to the women from the Nether Pavilion. Nether Maiden nodded. Bang! Nether Maiden was just about to speak when an even louder explosion resounded abruptly from below, and then the space in an area of over 30,000 kilometers started to tremble violently. "We can't hold on much longer." Boundary Maiden's voice came from below again, and there was a trace of anxiousness in her voice. Xianxia was at a loss for words. Nether Maiden and the pig-riding woman's expressions changed when they heard this, and then they exchanged glances. "You head down there. You head down there." Both of them spoke simultaneously. The pig-riding young woman spoke solemnly in an indisputable tone. "You go." Nether Maiden glanced at her and Xianxia, and then she said, "Be careful." As soon as she finished speaking, Nether Maiden's figure shook and vanished on the spot. Suddenly, a few terrifying auras appeared from afar. The owners of these auras were still over 20,000 kilometers away, but their auras had already arrived at the radiant dimension. More had arrived. Xianxia and the pig-riding young woman's faces fell. They weren't the only ones because even Xianxia, Hua Tianyuan, and the others' expressions had become quite unsightly. Someone was here, and that meant that more would be competing with them for the permit. But it wasn't a bad thing as well. If they thought of it from another perspective, wouldn't that be equivalent to having more help? Everyone watched as 3 men came from afar. Xianxia was surprised because they actually looked alike, regardless of their expressions, gazes, or the aura they emanated. Even every minute movement they made was completely alike. They were like the same person. Mu Sanyuan, Lian Suyao, Hua Tianyuan, and the others' expressions changed when they saw the 3 men. Xianxia noticed that all of them had revealed vigilance and fear in their eyes. Who are they? Xianxia gazed at the pig-riding young woman. However, she glanced at him and spoke indifferently. "I've never heard of him." Xianxia felt speechless. How ignorant! Meanwhile, Lian Suyao ridiculed. The hall masters of your nether pavilion are not bad indeed, but isn't your knowledge a little lacking? Allow me to give you a supplementary class today. They are triplets. All of them are called Mu Sanyuan, and they were born as one. Not their bodies, but their minds. If one thinks of something, the other two will think the same. So, their cultivation yields twice the results with half the effort, and it's like 3 people overlapping together when they fight others. You know, their souls can be exchanged with each other, and it doesn't affect them at all. Freaks. It was the first word that popped into Xianxia's mind. After all, not only were their minds connected, even their souls could be exchanged. So weren't they freaks? Needless to say, it was quite terrifying, because it represented that when one fought them, the cooperation between the 3 of them would arrive at an extremely terrifying height. Meanwhile, Lien Suyao said, you know, they killed the 10th on the dragon rankings in the past. However, because they do everything together, they can't be ranked on the dragon rankings. However, everyone in the lower dimensions knows them. Lien Suyao glanced coldly at the pig-riding young woman and said, just cultivating doesn't work. You should go out into the world and have a look. You will notice that this world is much larger than you've imagined, and you'll realize that there's nothing great about you. Yang Yi had quite an odd expression on his face. There was nothing wrong with what Lien Suyao had said. Nothing at all. Because he'd always felt the same way. However, everything was wrong with it when it was directed at the pig-riding young woman. Where was the nether pavilion from? It was from the large world. So, the pig-riding young woman's experience and knowledge definitely surpassed Lien Suyao. The pig-riding young woman glanced at Lien Suyao, glanced at Hua Tianyuan's group, and then said, if I'm to be honest, everyone here is trash. Yang Ye's face instantly darkened. After all, didn't she just insult him as well? Suddenly, the pig-riding young woman glanced at him and said, you're an exception. I'm not being nice. You're not bad even if it's in the large world. Of course, you're not really good either. In short, you barely pass. Yang Ye's face grew even darker. Are you insulting me or praising me? She replied indifferently, I'm just speaking the truth. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Lien Suyao and the others instantly revealed gloomy expressions on their faces. Arrogant. The pig-riding young woman was too arrogant. Actually, even Yang Yi felt that she was quite arrogant. Perhaps the people here weren't peerless geniuses, but they were absolutely not trash. However, he knew that she was from the large world, so she definitely seemed numerous geniuses. If the peerless geniuses of the large world were compared to them, then they would really just be ordinary. Simply speaking, their knowledge and hers weren't on the same level. Besides that, all of them had overlooked something, and it was her cultivation. She was just a quasi-emperor now. If she attained the Voider realm and was at the same realm of cultivation as them, then all of them would. We're all trash. Meanwhile, Mu Sanyuan spoke coldly. It was the figure at the center of the group that spoke. Because their minds were linked and were all called Mu Sanyuan, everyone considered them to be a single person. The pig-riding young woman paid no attention to Mu Sanyuan. She gazed at Yang Yi and pointed at Hua Tianyuan's group. Help me watch them. If any one of them dares to attack, then draw your sword and swing it at that fellow. Leave the rest to me. As soon as she finished speaking, the pig-riding young woman flipped her palm and put the spiked club away. After that, she patted the pig lightly. The latter glanced at her, nodded, and then transformed into a white ray of light that vanished down below. Once it left, she twisted her right hand, and a saber appeared in her grasp. The saber was extremely huge. Just its body was around 2 m long, so it was around the height of an adult. As for its width, it was almost 1 m, so it seemed like a small door. The saber was completely pitch black and had no blade. The pig-riding young woman withdrew a black cloth while the others watched, and then she bit on one end of the cloth while using her left hand to wrap it around her right hand and the saber's handle. In next to no time, her right hand was tied tightly to her saber's handle. Meanwhile, the pig-riding young woman started walking towards Lien Suyao while holding that door-sized saber. Everyone noticed to their astonishment that space was being sliced open by her saber. Moreover, The space around her was trembling, as if some sort of force was pressing down upon it. It was extremely shocking. Lien Suyao and the others had extremely solemn expressions on their faces when they witnessed this scene. It wasn't just Lien Suyao. Everyone else had solemn expressions on their faces. Even Yang Yi. After all, she felt extremely dangerous after she changed to her saber. I haven't used my saber for many years. As soon as she finished speaking, she stopped and turned to look at Yang Yi. Do you know why? Yang Yi remained silent. A slight smile curled up on the corners of her mouth. It was quite savage. She said, "Because I won't be able to control myself." As soon as she finished speaking, she stomped her right foot down. The space beneath her trembled violently while she transformed into a ray of light that shot at Lien Suyao. It was swift, extremely swift. Even Yang Yi was only able to see a blurry trace of her. Most importantly, her saber intent was actually at the peak of the rebirth rank. She'd been concealing her strength. Lien Suyao's pupils constricted when she witnessed the pig-riding young woman's speed. She was shocked but didn't panic, because she was prepared. Lien Suyao stretched her hands forward, twisted them, and shouted, "Shatter!" Bang! A terrifying force appeared here, and then space shattered. However, it only took a moment for the laws of the Heaven Tao to repair the shattered space. Meanwhile, everyone's expressions changed when they saw the scene before them. At this moment, Lien Suyao was over 6 kilometers away. Her countenance was pale while a wisp of blood could be seen on the corner of her mouth. The most striking part was that her right arm was gone. Everyone gazed at the pig-riding woman with astonishment. "She's actually so strong." Meanwhile, the pig-riding young woman pointed at her head while quite a savage expression could be seen on her face. "You want to exchange our heads for permits? I think all of you've been eating too much shit." As soon as she finished speaking, she shot forward like a bolt of lightning in Lien Suyao's direction. Lien Suyao's eyelids twitched, and then she gazed at Mu Sanyuan. "No one will be able to kill her if we don't join forces." As soon as she finished speaking, a wisp of ferocity flashed through her eyes. She tapped her right foot down and shot forward like a bolt of lightning. Mu Sanyuan hesitated for an instant, and then all three of them charged at the pig-riding young woman. They'd realized that she was no ordinary person, and they would really be unable to kill her if they didn't join forces with Lien Suyao. Moreover, they might even be killed instead. Even though the three of them had joined the battle, the pig-riding young woman seemed like she was pumped full of steroids. She grew more and more insane and fierce as the battle went on. Every single swing of her saber seemed capable of shattering the world, and it was extremely shocking. So, Mu Sanyuan and Lien Suyao were actually completely suppressed in the battle. Hua Tianyuan and the others had extremely solemn expressions on their faces when they witnessed this scene. The strengths of the Hall Masters from Nether Pavilion had truly gone far beyond their expectations. They'd thought that their joint forces would be sufficient to deal with a Hall Master with ease. However, the scene before them clearly told them that it was wishful thinking. They wanted to go help, but Yang Yi had never removed his lock on them. Compared to the pig-riding young woman, they feared Yang Yi even more, because that sword technique of Yang Ye's was truly too terrifying. Yang Yi could draw his sword, but only once. In other words, only one of them would die at the very most. However, was anyone willing to sacrifice themselves for the others? No one was. Hua Tianyuan was very well aware of that. So, he didn't dare to make them attack or stop Yang Yi. If he did that, this small group he assembled temporarily would split up in an instant. Of course, the exception would be that he went to resist Yang Ye's attack. But would he? If he had the confidence to do so, he would definitely do it. But the problem was that he wasn't confident at all. Just like that, Yang Yi and Hua Tianyuan's group were in a stalemate. As far as Yang Yi was concerned, he just had to keep them busy. Because Mu Sanyuan and Lien Suyao were completely suppressed. The pig-riding young woman's victory was only a matter of time. Around 15 minutes later, bang! A loud explosion resounded from below, and then the space in an area of over 20,000 kilometers cracked apart. Everyone here was shocked. Bang! Meanwhile, a white shadow charged up from below. "Stop it! Hurry! Boundary Maiden's voice sounded anxious and was trembling. The pig-riding young woman appeared by Yang Ye's side and said, "Go down there. Hurry." When he saw the anxiety that covered her face, Yang Yi didn't waste his breath and immediately charged at the white shadow. A wisp of ferocity curled up on the corners of Lien Suyao's mouth when she saw that only the pig-riding young woman was left here. Seize this opportunity to kill her. 1 against 9. Right when Lien Suyao and the others were about to attack, Yang Ye's alarmed voice resounded from below. "What the fuck is that?" After that, a ray of light flashed and Yang Yi appeared before the pig-riding young woman. His countenance was slightly pale as he gazed at her. "You go stop it. I'll deal with the 9 of them." The pig-riding young woman glared fiercely at Yang Yi, grabbed him by the shoulder, and pressed down. A powerful wave of force assaulted Yang Yi, and he was instantly pushed down. "Don't let her escape. Please." Her voice resounded in Yang Ye's mind while his figure shot down, and she sounded anxious as she implored him to help. Yang Yi looked up and saw her take a step forward, and then rebirth rank saber intent surged out explosively from within her. The terrifying saber intent she emanated enveloped all 9 of the experts in the sky above, and then she charged at them. 1 against 9. Even though she was an extremely monstrous genius, it was obviously impossible for her to fight 9 on her own. So, she started to suffer injuries from the moment the battle began. Yang Yi withdrew his gaze, took a deep breath, and then looked up. The shadow had arrived less than 300 m away from him. He wasn't joking earlier. He was serious about what he'd said to the pig-riding young woman just now. If he could choose, he would rather face Lien Suyao's group, even if he had to fight 9 on his own. Why? Because this shadow was too terrifying. He'd only just descended here when the Primordial Pagoda actually sent him a warning. The Primordial Pagoda wouldn't warn him when he faced ordinary danger. After all, it hadn't warned him when he met Jian Su and the Black Demonic Dragon. Yet now it had given him a warning. Since he came to the Radiant Dimension, the Primordial Pagoda had warned him on 2 separate occasions. The first was when he encountered Xianxia, and the second was Lady. Both of them were extraordinarily terrifying existences. What exactly is that thing? It actually made the Primordial Pagoda give me a warning? He found out very soon, because it was less than 30 m away from him now. A face. Yang Yi saw a human face within the white ball of light that had appeared before him. It was a female face. The hairs on Yang Ye's body stood on end when he saw it. The woman's face was ghastly pale and covered in madness and ferocity. Her eyes were blood red, and they emanated boundless resentment, baleful energy, and the slaughter intent. Yang Yi was someone who'd comprehended slaughter intent as well, and his slaughter intent and baleful energy would be extremely terrifying once he went mad. However, it was much inferior when compared to the slaughter intent and baleful energy before him. Moreover, the face was filled with resentment. The resentment it possessed was too strong. It was countless times stronger than the negative emotions that Jian Wuji had left behind on Sword God Mountain. Most importantly, the slaughter intent emanated from it wasn't at the rebirth rank, it was at the peak of the quasi-returnal rank. Peak quasi-returnal rank sword intent. Moreover, there was another form of intent being emanated from the face, and it was resentment. The resentment it emanated had solidified, and if it were considered as an intent, it would be comparable to a quasi-returnal rank intent. 2 types of quasi-returnal rank intents. Could be said that this face was stronger than Jian Su, and it wasn't just a little bit stronger. Yet now he had to stop her. Stop her. Stop her my ass. Yang Yi couldn't help but curse in his heart. She really thinks too highly of me. Even though he wasn't confident, he still had to do something, because he could sense that regardless of whether it was the pig-riding young woman or Nether Maiden, all of them were very anxious and concerned. In other words, this face was extremely important to them. I have to stop it. Yang Yi took a deep breath, took a step forward, and the sword god's seal lit up on his forehead. After that, rebirth rank sword intent surged out madly from within him before he took another step forward. His sword intent immediately started to condense, and it only took an instant for a terrifying wave of force to erupt from him and slam against the face. Sword intent at the brink. Yang Yi naturally didn't dare act carelessly at all when facing the terrifying face before him, and he'd immediately utilized the brink laws with his sword intent. Meanwhile, a wave of terrifying energy suddenly erupted from the face, and it instantly slammed against Yang Ye's sword intent. Bang! A rumbling explosion resounded, and then Yang Yi was blasted over 3 kilometers away. Bang! It didn't take long for an explosion to resound from afar. Yang Yi looked over and saw that the aftershock from the collision had been obliterated, and the face had transformed into a beam of light that was charging at him. It was so swift that he couldn't even see it clearly. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. He glanced downwards and saw Nether Maiden and the others were charging up in his direction. So, he just had to keep the face busy for a moment longer. Yang Yi pondered deeply for an instant before he shook his left wrist slightly. The sword precursor within the ancient sheath was exchanged for Heaven's gravestone. He held tightly onto Heaven's gravestone while his profound energy surged madly before flowing into the ancient sheath. He naturally didn't dare to use the true form of Heavenrend. Jiansu had been able to resist it that day, and this face was even stronger than Jiansu. So, the face might be unharmed by his attack, and if that happened, then he would be in trouble. Yang Yi held tightly onto the hilt of his sword while profound energy surged madly within him. The veins throughout his right arm had bulged, and they seemed like tiny snakes and made his arm seem quite terrifying. The face was growing closer and closer, and it didn't take long for the face to arrive 30 m away from Yang Yi. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Yang Ye's eyes as he stomped his right foot down, and then his figure shot forward like a cannonball. Yang Yi swiftly drew his sword and swung it once he got close to the face. 750 overlapped Heavenrends. At this moment, he could execute 750 Heavenrends overlapped together, and that was his limit. Meanwhile, 2 blood-red beams of light shot out from the face, and they slammed against Yang Ye's sword. Bang! The space around them trembled violently, and then collapsed. But it only took an instant for it to be repaired by the laws of the Heaven Tao. Meanwhile, Yang Yi had been blasted over 6 kilometers away, and the face was merely blasted around 1 kilometer away. Yang Ye's countenance was pale, and there was a wisp of scarlet red on the corner of his mouth while a solemn expression filled his eyes. What exactly is that thing? He could sense that it was attacking instinctively. In other words, it was an instinctive reaction when it sensed danger. If it really had a consciousness, then it would definitely be extremely terrifying. At this moment, the face seemed to be angry and grew even more ferocious. Roar! Suddenly, it looked up and roared with fury. In an instant, the space in an area of over 20,000 kilometers shook violently as if it was about to collapse. Yang Ye's eyelids twitched at the sight of this. It wasn't just terrifying. The face was quite mysterious as well. What exactly is it? Why are Nether Maiden and the others trying to suppress this human face? A string of questions flashed through Yang Ye's mind, but he had no answer for it. Suddenly, the face gazed at Yang Yi. Yang Yi was shocked by this, and the profound energy within him surged madly as he sheathed Heaven's gravestone. He was ready to draw it at any moment. As expected, the face shot explosively in Yang Ye's direction. During this process, numerous strands of blood-red energy flowed out from around it. More and more energy flowed out from it, and the energy covered an area of almost 3 kilometers when the face arrived 300 m before Yang Yi. However, the energy was still growing and was on the verge of completely enveloping Yang Yi. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while solemnness filled his eyes. He didn't dare act carelessly at all. He immediately stomped his right foot down and transformed into a ray of light that shot towards the blood-red energy. A wisp of ruthlessness flashed through Yang Ye's eyes when he arrived less than 30 m away from the face, and then he drew his sword and swung it. OM! A sword howl resounded as a beam of sword energy flashed forward. Bang! After that, an explosion resounded through the sky. Yang Yi watched with shock as his sword energy was instantly obliterated, and then a beam of blood-red light shot towards him. The blood-red beam of energy hadn't even arrived before him. Yet the powerful force it carried caused the space around Yang Yi to crack apart. Moreover, Yang Yi was even forced backwards by it. It didn't take long for the beam of blood-red light to arrive in front of Yang Yi. Suddenly, a ray of cold light flashed, and an ice shield appeared before Yang Yi. Bang! The beam of blood-red energy slammed against the ice shield. The ice shield trembled violently before being obliterated, but the beam of blood-red energy hadn't vanished. Meanwhile, a woman in an ice-blue dress appeared in front of Yang Yi, and then it wasn't long before Nether Maiden, Boundary Maiden, Light Maiden, and Oblivion Maiden appeared before Yang Yi. Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief when he saw them. He truly didn't want to continue fighting the face, because unless he used the true form of Heavenrend, he would only be bashed up without the ability to fight back. Fortunately, Nether Maiden and the others had rushed over. They didn't speak a single word. The woman in an ice-blue dress took a step forward. In an instant, the temperature here plummeted, and then a wave of cold air appeared around the face. The cold air instantly froze the face. However, it didn't take long for the face to slam against the ice, causing it to crack apart in an instant. Seal! Meanwhile, Boundary Maiden's voice resounded abruptly. It didn't take long for a barrier to cover the ice, and then the ice was instantly fortified. Ice! The voice of the woman in the ice-blue dress resounded, and then countless ice crystals covered the barrier in an instant. Meanwhile, they appeared around the face that was now covered in ice. They nodded to each other, stretched their hands forward in unison, and then a wave of energy covered the face. After that, they took it with them as they descended slowly. Suddenly, something unexpected occurred. A figure flashed out from a distant point in space, and then a dazzling ray of light slammed against the ice that sealed the face. Bang! The ice shattered into bits, and the face transformed into a ray of light that shot up into the sky. Nether Maiden and the others' faces instantly became hideous when they witnessed this. The face was extremely swift and only took an instant to arrive high above in the sky. Right when it was about to vanish from their fields of vision, a sword howl suddenly resounded there. Bang! A loud explosion resounded, and then countless rays of sword energy surged towards the face. It was naturally Yang Yi. Yang Yi had reacted the moment that mysterious person had appeared, but he hadn't chosen to attack the mysterious person because he knew that the face was extremely important to Nether Maiden and the others. So he'd immediately chased after the face once it broke through the seal. Nether Maiden and the others heaved sighs of relief when they witnessed this scene. "10th sister, you stop that fellow. Everyone else come with me." As soon as she finished speaking, Boundary Maiden immediately charged up into the air with Ice Maiden, Light Maiden, and Oblivion Maiden. In an instant, they'd arrived high above in the sky. Meanwhile, Yang Yi had been blasted almost 10 kilometers away. Boundary Maiden and the others were shocked and hurriedly acted. Light Maiden and Oblivion Maiden immediately shot over and appeared before the face, and then 2 terrifying waves of energy erupted from within them, causing the face to be blasted backwards repeatedly. Ice! Seal! As soon as Ice Maiden and Boundary Maiden's voices resounded, the face was instantly sealed in ice again before a boundary covered the ice. It didn't take long for their joint forces to suppress the face once more. "Let's go!" Boundary Maiden gave the order, and they slowly descended with the face. During this process, Ice Maiden and Boundary Maiden were ceaselessly sealing the face. Yang Yi didn't follow them down. He glanced towards the other side. At this moment, Nether Maiden was in battle with that person who'd suddenly appeared earlier. It was a black-robed figure that was completely enveloped by the black robe, so it was impossible to discern the person's gender. However, that black-robed figure's strength was extraordinary to the point of fighting Nether Maiden equally. Yang Yi was about to lend her a hand when he seemed to have thought of something, and he looked off into the distance instead. He was shocked when he witnessed the scene there. Even though the pig-riding young woman was covered in many injuries after being besieged by Lien Suyao's group, she actually showed no signs of losing. Moreover, Hua Tianyuan and the others were actually injured, especially the petite woman who rode the wolf. At this moment, the wolf was gone, and just like Lien Suyao, she'd lost an arm. As for Su Daoming, who used a saber just like the pig-riding young woman, he was in an even more miserable state. A third of his head had been chopped off, and both his arms had vanished. Su Daoming had lost the ability to fight. As for the others, they'd suffered a varying degree of injuries. It was terrifying. The pig-riding young woman's strength was absolutely terrifying. That was what Yang Yi felt right now, because he noticed that no one there dared to go head-on against the pig-riding young woman's saber. Her saber moved unhindered. She hadn't executed any techniques and was just using simple movements like chopping and sweeping. However, every single attack was extremely terrifying. It could be said that so long as they went head-on against it, they would definitely suffer injuries even if they could avoid death. Brute force alone can counter everything. Regardless of what technique or move she was up against, all she needed was a single swing of her saber. Yang Yi remained silent for a moment, and then he shot towards the pig-riding young woman. Even though she seemed quite invincible, he could discern that she was really exhausted, just like him. It could be said that she was overexhausting her energy, and if she continued on like this, the backlash she suffered would be extremely serious. So he had to act. Yang Yi didn't charge into the battle. He changed Heaven's gravestone into the sword precursor and sheathed it within the ancient sheath. At the instant his sword was sheathed in the ancient sheath. OM! A sharp sword howl resounded, and then the space in an area of over 20,000 kilometers trembled violently like an earthquake was going through it. Lien Suyao and the others who were in battle with the pig-riding young woman glanced in Yang Ye's direction. Their expressions instantly changed when they saw Yang Yi walking towards them with a sword in hand, and then they moved around 3 kilometers back and left the battlefield. This caused the 3 Musanuans to be stunned. They had obviously not expected that Lien Suyao and the others would retreat abruptly. Because of their retreat, the pressure on the pig-riding young woman had suddenly lightened. She had no further worries, so she immediately swung her saber at the 3 Musanuans. All 3 Musanuans' expressions changed drastically at the sight of this, and they didn't hesitate to turn around and retreat. What a joke! All 9 of them hadn't been able to defeat the woman before them, yet now only 3 of them remained. So, how could they resist this woman who seemed to have gone mad? However, she seemed to have no intention to stop, and she was about to charge at Musanuan. But Yang Yi appeared before her and obstructed her path. Yang Yi was about to speak when she raised her hand and swung her saber at him. The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched. She really has fought to the point of madness. Yang Yi didn't dare act carelessly, yet he didn't attack as well. A ray of light flashed when the saber was a few dozen centimeters away from him, and then his sword stabbed against a point on her saber. The saber shook violently, and then both of them moved around 30 m back at the same time. He'd located its weak point. Her physical strength was greater than Yang Yi, but the gap wasn't that huge. So, she couldn't use her strength to overwhelm and crush him. If any other sword cultivator was in his place, then even if that sword cultivator possessed the enlightened sword heart, it would be impossible for that sword cultivator to stop her saber. Unless that sword cultivator possessed a physical body at the epic realm like Yang Yi. The pig-riding young woman instantly returned to her senses once Yang Yi pushed her back, and she glared angrily at him and said, "What are you doing?" Yang Yi walked towards here. At this moment, her face was covered in blood. Besides her eyes, her entire face was covered in blood. It wasn't just her face. Even her hair and body were scarlet red. It was a mix of her own blood and the blood of her enemies. He had been angry that she just attacked him like that, but after he saw the state that she was in, he wasn't able to say anything about it. Yang Yi just spoke softly, "Quickly recuperate. Leave the rest to me." She blinked. "Are you sure?" Yang Yi nodded. She didn't possess the heaven-defying effects of the primordial pagoda. So, once her physical strength was exhausted beyond its limits, it would take her 10 days or around half a month to recover. Actually, it might even take longer. Moreover, it might even cause side effects. So, she had to recuperate right now. She glanced at him and didn't speak a word. She just sat down cross-legged on the spot. And then she withdrew numerous divine crystals and started absorbing them. Yang Yi didn't waste his breath, and he just turned around and gazed at Hua Tianyuan and the others. At this moment, all their clothes were bloodied, and they seemed to be in quite an embarrassing state. However, there was a ferocious glow in their eyes. Obviously, the battle had caused their fury to burn. Yang Yi remained silent for an instant before he started walking towards them while holding the ancient sheath in his grasp. Their expressions instantly changed at the sight of this. Even though the pig-riding young woman was very terrifying, they were very well aware that if they worked well together, then it would be difficult for her to kill them. But Yang Yi wasn't the same. That technique of his killed anyone it was aimed at. Actually, if someone forced Yang Yi to swing his sword, then the others would definitely swarm him. But who would do that? No one would. They would absolutely not sacrifice themselves to allow others to benefit. Meanwhile, Yang Yi stopped, glanced at them and said, "Allow me to speak a little. All of you are geniuses. If you want to enter the large world, you can rely on your strength to get in there. Why do you need them to give alms to you?" Hua Tianyuan spoke in a low voice. "No one can enter the large world without a permit. All of you refuse to go up there just because they don't allow it?" Yang Ye's voice suddenly grew louder. He gazed at Hua Tianyuan and said, "Since they don't allow it, then don't all of you know how to fight them? In any case, if I am to head up there and they refuse to let me, then I'll beat them up until they beg me to enter. Do you know what the large world is like?" Hua Tianyuan spoke in a low voice. "Fight your way in? That's simply laughable to the extreme. Once you realize how terrifying they are, you're the laughable one." Yang Yi suddenly interrupted Hua Tianyuan. "To think you were once the #1 expert on the Radiant Dimension's martial rankings. But is this all you're capable of? The large world wasn't created by them, so on what basis are they occupying it and stopping others from entering?" Lien Suyao spoke coldly. "Because they are strong. Then work hard on becoming stronger." Yang Yi gazed at Lien Suyao and said, "When you become stronger than them, would they dare to stop you? But all of you aren't thinking in that way. All of you are thinking about that permit. The permit system they created is like giving handouts to you. Understand?" Mu Sanyuan spoke coldly. "You just want us to leave, right?" Yang Yi nodded and said, "That's what I want indeed. Of course, it's fine if you refuse. We can just decide things with our strength." What high-sounding sentiments! Suddenly, a voice resounded from afar, and then a man in a luxurious robe strode through the air towards them. Jin Xiu. Mu Sanyuan had a solemn expression on their faces when they saw the man. Lien Suyao, Hua Tianyuan, and the others' faces turned solemn as well when they heard those two words. Jin Xiu, the 9th on the dragon rankings. Another monstrous genius. Jin Xiu's gaze descended onto Yang Yi, and he said, "If I'm not wrong, you're Yang Yi, right?" Yang Yi nodded. "I am. Ha ha ha." Jin Xiu suddenly roared with laughter, and he laughed for a while before he said, "10 permits! Yang Yi, your head is worth 10 permits." 10? Lien Suyao and the others instantly frowned. Lien Suyao asked, "Isn't it 5? Jin Xiu chuckled. "All of you haven't heard? The price on his head has risen to 10 permits. Lien Suyao and the others instantly gazed at Yang Yi with hostile gazes that carried a trace of fervor. The atmosphere here suddenly fell silent. Lien Suyao and Hua Tianyuan exchanged glances, and then they vanished on the spot and shot towards Yang Yi. "You think you can fight me for it? How laughable!" Jin Xiu laughed coldly when he saw them charge at Yang Yi, and then he shot towards Yang Yi. His speed was extremely swift and was much faster than Lien Suyao and Hua Tianyuan. So it only took an instant for him to pass them. Jin Xiu's eyes were filled with excitement as he gazed at Yang Yi. However, he hadn't noticed that both Lien Suyao and Hua Tianyuan had suddenly stopped once he passed them, and then they started retreating as fast as they could. A trap. Their attack on Yang Yi was actually a trap for Jin Xiu. Yang Ye's head was even more valuable, so they were naturally much more tempted. However, their minds were very clear. Who wouldn't want 10 permits? Who could refuse them? However, one had to be alive to enjoy them. No one could resist Yang Ye's attack, so the first to move would die. However, if Yang Yi swung his sword, then they would have nothing left to worry about. So, They'd formed a tacit understanding when they exchanged glances earlier, and it was to trick Xianxia. They'd succeeded. Xianxia was so afraid that Yang Ye's head would be taken from him that he'd attacked decisively. Xianxia was charging swiftly in Yang Ye's direction while Lian Suyao, Hua Tianyuan, and the others were retreating swiftly. Moreover, they were even hurriedly creating barriers of profound energy and withdrawing all sorts of defensive treasures. The Mu Sanuans were very puzzled because they'd never witnessed the strength of Yang Ye's sword technique. So they hadn't taken any precautions, and they hadn't even retreated. They just gazed at Yang Yi with a trace of bewilderment in their eyes. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw Xianxia charge over, and he held his sword's hilt with his right hand. It didn't take long for Xianxia to arrive around 20 m before him. Yang Yi didn't hesitate to draw his sword and swing it. OM! A sword howl resounded as a beam of sword energy shot out from the ancient sheath. The space in an area of almost 30,000 kilometers cracked apart in an instant before collapsing. At this moment, the world dimmed down for everyone here, and it seemed like the sky had collapsed. It didn't take long for space to return to normal. Surprisingly, Xianxia was still there. At this moment, he was around 5 m away from Yang Yi. His hand had just been raised, and it was flickering with dazzling gold light. Obviously, he'd wanted to attack, yet he'd stopped. Everyone noticed that Xianxia's countenance was ghastly pale while fear filled his eyes. Not, it should be described as terror. Moreover, beads of sweat were flowing from his forehead and face. If one looked even more carefully, one would notice that Xianxia's body was trembling. He withstood Yang Ye's attack? Such a thought had appeared in everyone's minds. Because Xianxia was still alive, and he was completely fine. A moment of silence ensued before a horrified voice resounded. Hua Tianyuan is gone. Lian Suyao and the others hurriedly gazed towards the spot Hua Tianyuan had been standing on. At this moment it was completely empty. Lian Suyao seemed to have thought of something, and her countenance suddenly turned pale. It wasn't just her who had such a reaction. Su Daoming and the others were the same. As for the 3 Mu Sanuans, actually they were in quite a miserable state, because they hadn't taken any precautions. So, they'd been slammed around 10 kilometers away by the aftershock. Even though the injuries they suffered weren't very severe, they weren't light as well. The aftershock had caused them to bleed from all 7 apertures. At this moment, their eyes were filled with fear as they gazed at Yang Yi. Xianxia was still alive, but Hua Tianyuan was gone. Why? Because Yang Yi hadn't swung his sword at Xianxia, and he'd swung it at Hua Tianyuan. Xianxia's body was still trembling slightly before Yang Yi. No one could understand how he felt earlier. At the moment Yang Yi drew his sword, Xianxia knew that he'd underestimated his opponent. But at that time he had no way out, and he could only fight desperately. As for when Yang Ye's sword energy shot forward, there was only a single thought in his mind. It was that he was finished. That attack wasn't something he could resist. He wasn't looking down upon himself, but it was the truth. However, right when he thought that he was about to die, the sword energy didn't shoot towards him, and it shot a few dozen kilometers to his side. After that, nothing happened to him. He'd brushed against death's door. He really had, because he would definitely die if that attack was launched at him. Suddenly, Yang Yi sheathed his sword again. The hairs throughout Xianxia's body stood on end when he witnessed this scene, and then he immediately shot around 10 kilometers back. Lian Suyao and the others had instantly appeared around 10 kilometers back as well, and they had extremely vigilant expressions on their faces. Yang Yi was stunned, and then he said, "What are all of you doing? Don't be afraid, I can't draw my sword again. That exhausted all my profound energy. Seriously, I'm not deceiving all of you. Don't be afraid." Who wouldn't be afraid? All of them had witnessed the strength of that attack. Not to mention them, even deities may not guarantee they could resist that attack. As for profound energy, it would be different if Yang Yi hadn't said that, but now that he had, they felt that Yang Yi might be able to draw his sword again. In short, regardless of whether he could draw his sword or not, they didn't dare to attack him. Because if he still could, then wouldn't they be giving their lives away? Yang Ye's gaze descended onto Xianxia, and he said, See? They intended to make you die for them. Jin Xiu's face fell, and then he turned to glance at Lien Suyao's group. His gaze was icy cold, and the intent to kill flickered within them. Actually, he knew that even if Yang Yi didn't say anything. Lien Suyao and Hua Tianyuan had attacked first to make him attack and block Yang Ye's attack for them. Simply speaking, they wanted him to die for them. No matter who was used, they would definitely feel displeased. Not to mention that he'd almost lost his life. A smile curled up on the corners of Yang Ye's mouth when he noticed the expression on Jin Xiu's face. This was the reason why he'd killed Hua Tianyuan instead of Jin Xiu. All of them would choose to temporarily join forces in order to kill him, the pig-riding young woman, and the others to gain their heads. But once they joined forces, they would be a huge threat to him and the pig-riding young woman, especially after Jin Xiu arrived here. So he decided to spare Jin Xiu, because Jin Xiu would definitely feel resentment towards Lien Suyao and the others who tried to use him. In that way, they would definitely be unable to join forces. After all, even if Jin Xiu said yes now, Lien Suyao and the others would definitely not trust him. So long as they didn't join forces, they would be vigilant against each other and fear each other. That was naturally a good thing for him and the pig-riding young woman. Jin Xiu and Lien Suyao's group didn't attack, so Yang Yi wouldn't attack, of course. Actually, he hadn't lied. He really didn't have profound energy left in his body. Of course, there was still a little bit in him, less than 10% of the usual volume of profound energy that he possessed. Because while he hadn't recovered completely when he was recuperating earlier, he'd recovered by almost 60%. He had some profound energy, but his body was overexhausted once more. So, not to mention drawing the sword precursor, he didn't even have the strength to draw Heaven's gravestone. Actually, it was very normal. The true form of Heavenrend was so powerful, so it would be too heaven-defying if it only exhausted a little profound energy. Moreover, that wouldn't be realistic at all. It wasn't like that for Heavenrend alone. All powerful techniques had extremely high requirements when it came to profound energy. Lien Suyao and Jin Xiu didn't attack, so Yang Yi didn't attack as well, and they were in a stalemate once more. However, the atmosphere here was quite tense, because it was like a volcano that was about to erupt. Lien Suyao, Jin Xiu, and the others hadn't chosen to leave. That represented that they still wanted to take Yang Yi and the pig-riding woman's head. So they would attack again, and it was only a matter of time. Yang Yi paid no attention to them, and he just gazed at Nether Maiden who wasn't too far away below them. At this moment, she was in battle with the black-robed figure, and they were deadlocked in combat. Moreover, it was extremely intense. Yang Yi was shocked by the black-robed figure's strength. He knew Nether Maiden's strength very well, and it could be said that if she really fought with her life on the line, then she would definitely not be weaker than the pig-riding young woman. However, the black-robed figure was actually equally matched with her. Where did this genius come from? Suddenly, Lien Suyao stepped forward. She gazed at Jin Xiu, and then pointed at Yang Yi and the pig-riding young woman behind Yang Yi. She said, "Both of them have suffered very heavy injuries. If we join forces, we'll definitely be able to kill them. If we don't join forces, then we'll have no choice but to flee for our lives once they recover." Jin Xiu glanced at Yang Yi and the pig-riding young woman, and he remained silent. Lien Suyao added, "We can deal with the enmity between us later. However, I'm sure you've realized how strong they are. If we don't deal with them as soon as possible, none of us will be able to kill them soon. Conversely, we might get killed by them." Jin Xiu was about to speak when Yang Yi suddenly spoke ferociously. "Come on! Scheme against each other." As he spoke, Yang Yi clenched the hilt of his sword tightly and started walking towards them. "My head is right here. Come and take it if you dare. Both of us really are heavily injured right now, but we can still take all of you down with us before we die." Yang Ye's footsteps grew quicker and quicker. Even though he didn't emanate his sword intent or aura, there was a strand of invisible pressure that pressed down upon Lien Suyao and the others. Lien Suyao and the others' expressions changed when they noticed that Yang Yi seemed to be about to go berserk. They were naturally afraid of that, because if Yang Yi drew his sword again, then perhaps one of them would die. Should we attack or not? All of them had quite the dilemma at this moment. If they didn't attack, it represented that they would be giving up on the permit. Yang Yi was right before them, and he was even heavily injured. So, how could they be willing to give up on obtaining the permits? However, if they didn't give up, then it meant they should be prepared to be instantly killed at any moment. It was a dilemma. Lien Suyao and the others were hesitant, but Yang Yi was walking faster and faster. He seemed like he wanted to force them to attack. At this moment, Yang Yi was emanating a faint blood-red glow, and his eyes and hair had turned blood-red. He seemed quite terrifying, and a little insane. Suddenly, a voice that carried a trace of age came from outer space. "I'll do it myself." As soon as the voice finished resounded, a red palm flashed out from the starry sky and slammed down towards the radiant dimension. This palm didn't just target Yang Yi and the pig-riding young woman, it had targeted the entire radiant dimension. If it were to strike down, then the radiant dimension would be shattered. Most importantly, it was a deity who'd launched this attack. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while fury filled them. They just won't fucking stop. At this point in the battle, Yang Ye's rage had arrived at a breaking point. There were always more coming to replace the dead, and the groups that arrived here were growing larger and stronger. Now, even a deity had arrived. There was no end to it. Ferocity surged through Yang Ye's eyes, and he was about to execute the stellar ward technique. However, a ray of light shot out from deep within outer space, and it instantly arrived in the sky above the radiant dimension before slamming against the dark red palm. Bang! The dark red palm shattered into bits of energy that rained down from the sky, and it only took an instant for a wave of mysterious energy to obliterate the bits of energy. Everyone here was shocked. Who lent me a hand from so far away? Yang Yi had a trace of bewilderment in his eyes. He turned to look at the pig-riding young woman. The latter pondered deeply for a moment and said, "Third sister, blind maiden." A wisp of excitement flashed through Yang Ye's eyes, and then he turned to look at Jin Xiao and the others. "Perhaps you can still escape if you leave now. Otherwise, you won't have a chance soon." Needless to say, they did feel a trace of fear right now. That person who'd lent Yang Yi a hand earlier was definitely not someone they could resist. The Nether Pavilion had experts too, and it was even a supreme expert comparable to a deity. Obviously, if that person acted against them, then they would definitely die. There's no need to fear them. Suddenly, a voice resounded, and then a black-robed figure appeared not too far in front of Yang Yi. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. The black-robed figure was the same one that Nether Maiden had been fighting. Yang Yi turned around and saw Nether Maiden had appeared by his side. Nether Maiden spoke solemnly, "Be careful. He's from the large world." The large world. Yang Yi was slightly shocked. He hadn't expected that the black-robed figure had actually come down here from the large world. In other words, the large world had started to act itself. Meanwhile, the black-robed figure said, "There's no need to worry. There naturally are others to deal with the experts of the Nether Pavilion. You'll get 5 permits if you kill a hall master of the Nether Pavilion. Moreover, once you enter the large world, you can use their heads to directly enter a violet gold rank power in the large world." A violet gold rank power. Lien Suyao and the others were visibly moved. The strongest power in the lower dimensions was at the titanium rank, and only the large world had violet gold rank powers. What did such a power represent? It represented backing and resources. No matter how outstanding one's natural talent was, it would be difficult for one to grow without the fostering of a power. Because cultivating didn't just require natural talent, it required resources as well. No matter how great one's natural talent was, one's accomplishments would be limited without resources. Because having no one to foster and support you meant that you would have to waste a lot of time on earning energy stones and other trivial matters. Moreover, if they had a sect to support and foster them, then they would just have to cultivate. Because the sect would resolve everything else. Besides that, the sect would be there to back them up if they get into trouble. So, it was obvious how important powerful backing was. Of course, it wasn't absolute. Many independent cultivators were extremely formidable. But in the opinions of most, having the backing of a sect was the best. because it was common knowledge that independent cultivators suffered through their lives. Meanwhile, Lien Suyao suddenly asked, "Why should we believe you?" "I'm from the large world," the black-robed figure said. "We published that assignment which all of you've accepted. If you return to Stellar City now, you'll know that I'm not lying. Because the compensation has changed." Lien Suyao spoke in a low voice. "There's something I don't understand. Since your large world wants Yang Yi and the Nether Pavilion's experts' lives, then why doesn't it send supreme experts itself? I think that if you send your supreme experts, both Yang Yi and the Nether Pavilion will have no chance of surviving, right?" Yang Yi gazed at the black-robed figure as well because he too wanted to know the answer. The large world's experts weren't fools, so they naturally wouldn't do something like sending nobodies to give their enemies experience. However, the large world hadn't just sent countless deity realm experts here. Just as Lien Suyao had said, if it really did send its experts, then he and the Nether Pavilion would really be in danger. After all, those powers would definitely have no lack of deities. However, they hadn't done so. Conversely, they published such an assignment and made the experts of the lower dimensions come to kill them. Yang Yi was quite puzzled by this. "Let me answer that." Meanwhile, the pig-riding young woman suddenly said, "Because there's a restriction. Anyone at the deity realm or above from the large world will have their cultivations restricted by the supreme heaven Tao when they descend to the lower dimensions. They would be suppressed to a lower realm." "Why?" It was Yang Yi who asked this question. "Balance." The pig-riding young woman spoke indifferently. "It's like raising pigs. If you raise pigs, would you allow a tiger into the pigsty?" Yang Ye's face darkened. "What kind of analogy is that?" She shrugged. "Those are the facts. However, you're far from able to understand what I've just said. But you'll understand in the future." Yang Yi was at a loss for words. She added, "We chose to come down here because of the restriction placed on them by the Supreme Heaven Tao. That was also why they didn't send down all their experts to annihilate us. So, they published that assignment with the intent of using these fellows to kill us. Understand?" Yang Yi nodded. "So their cultivation will be restricted if they come down here. But it does make sense. The lower dimensions would be eternally enslaved if they could come down here without any restraint, and we would have no chance to develop. With this restriction, the lower dimensions have space and the opportunity to grow. Only then can this world not fall into the hands of just a single power." Even though he didn't have a good impression of the Eye of the Heaven Tao because it always wanted to kill him, Yang Yi had to admit that he really approved of the Heaven Tao's restriction. Because if the restriction didn't exist, then he wouldn't have to face these people but a group of experts above the deity realm. Yet now, he didn't have to fear deities even if they came down here. Because Blind Maiden was here, deities were no threat to her. However, they still couldn't be underestimated. Because when numbers arrived at a certain level, numbers could make up for the lack in quality. Moreover, besides the deities of the large world, the lower dimensions had many deities that were eyeing their heads. So, the pressure Blind Maiden experienced was very great. Because she had to stop all the deities. As for those below the deity realm, they had no choice but to deal with them. Meanwhile, the black-robed figure suddenly said, "Everyone, I know that you're worried about Yang Yi. So how about you leave him to me? All of you can deal with the other two." Lien Suyao and the others exchanged glances and were quite hesitant. The black-robed figure added, "There are no gains without pain. The permits are an opportunity to all of you, an opportunity to enter the large world. I presume that all of you don't want to just give up. Of course, it's fine even if you do give up. If I'm not wrong, the monstrous geniuses and experts of countless other worlds are rushing over here as we speak." Lien Suyao and Jin Shou exchanged glances. In the end, Lien Suyao said, "You'll deal with Yang Yi?" The black-robed figure replied, "I will." The hesitance in their eyes was instantly transformed into resolve. They didn't speak another word and just charged at Nether Maiden and the pig-riding young woman. Now that Yang Yi wasn't a threat to them, they had nothing else to worry about. So they'd attacked decisively. Nether Maiden and the pig-riding young woman didn't waste their breaths. Both of them shot towards Lien Suyao, Jin Shou, and the others. The battle erupted. The black-robed man said, "You've offended the Divine Phoenix clan," Xianxia asked. "It was the Divine Phoenix clan that published the assignment to kill me, right?" "Yes," the black-robed figure continued. "I'm really quite curious. How did someone from the lower dimensions like you actually offend the Divine Phoenix clan? However, that isn't important because it has nothing to do with me. How about we do this? I'll spare you if you choose to leave right now." Xianxia smiled. "What if I refuse?" The black-robed figure replied. "It wasn't easy to cultivate to your current realm of cultivation. So, why give your life away?" Xianxia shook his head. "There are many occasions and many things that I have to do even if I might die." As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia put both the ancient sheath and sword precursor away, and Heaven's gravestone appeared in his grasp. He'd used all the profound energy within him to repair his body while they were talking earlier. At this moment, his body had recovered slightly, but he didn't have any profound energy. Now, he could only rely on his physical strength. His physical strength was sufficient to put up a fight. "Since it's like that, then let me take you head and gain a favor from the Divine Phoenix clan." As soon as the black-robed figure's voice finished resounding, his figure vanished on the spot. He was in front of Xianxia when his figure appeared once more. At the same time, countless strands of black energy shot towards Xianxia like a dense swarm of tiny snakes. Xianxia slowly closed his eyes. When the black energy arrived just a few dozen centimeters away from him, Xianxia's sword stabbed forward swiftly. Hiss! 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 In an instant, all the black energy around Xianxia had vanished. The black-robed man who was just about to attack had stopped moving, and a breath of time passed before he spoke solemnly. The ability to destroy all things with a single swing of the sword. He'd naturally heard of this ability, but he'd never witnessed it for himself. The truly strong sword cultivators were extremely terrifying. Not to mention anything else, just this ability was a huge headache for others. Regardless of what technique or move one used, they would be destroyed with a single swing of the sword. Let me see exactly how strong that legendary ability is. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure transformed into a ray of black light that shot explosively towards Xianxia. Xianxia and the black-robed man were locked in battle. No matter how the black-robed man attacked, what moves he used, or what techniques he executed, all of them were destroyed by a simple swing of Xianxia's sword. Xianxia hadn't chosen to attack. He didn't have the ability to attack right now, so forcing an attack was pointless. After all, he wasn't able to execute any powerful techniques right now, and that meant that he couldn't cause any material harm to his opponent. Moreover, once he forced an attack and allowed the black-robed man to catch a flaw in his attack, then he would fall into a terrible situation. He didn't have sufficient strength to attack, but he had more than enough to defend himself. He possessed a powerful physical body and possessed the enlightened sword heart. So, he was using his enlightened sword heart to supplement his physical strength, allowing him to deal with any moves that the black-robed man executed. The black-robed man's strength was beyond doubt. However, regardless of whether it was speed or strength, both of them were almost equals. So, Xianxia wasn't just able to swiftly locate the flaws in his attacks. Xianxia could even swing his sword in time and destroy the black-robed man's attacks. In the past, Xianxia had practically never utilized his ability to find the flaws of his opponent's attacks and destroy them, because he very rarely had a dragged-out battle with anyone. It was always concluded with a single swing of his sword or just a few attacks. When his strength was absolutely superior to his opponent's, it would be quite a waste of time to counter his opponents like that. On the other hand, the other type of enemy he faced were enemies whose strength far surpassed his own. It was impossible for him to locate the flaws and destroy the attacks of such experts. Now, he couldn't execute any sword techniques, so he had no choice but to engage in a battle of attrition with the black-robed man. They fought intensely for a long time, but no one could gain the upper hand over the other. However, the black-robed man was very well aware that Xianxia would definitely lose if the battle went on, because physical strength would be exhausted as well. Coupled with the fact that Xianxia had already been injured, even if Xianxia's body didn't get overexhausted, Xianxia would still become extremely exhausted. That moment would be an opportunity for him. On the other hand, Yang Yi was waiting. He was waiting for Nether Maiden and the pig-riding young woman to deal with those fellows. The pig-riding young woman had gone berserk. Every single swing of her saber seemed capable of slashing the world into two. It was absolutely shocking. Her frenzied attacks caused Lien Suyao and the others to fall into a disadvantaged situation. Moreover, the pig-riding young woman's aura was growing stronger as the battle progressed. So Lien Suyao's group's defeat was only a matter of time. Jin Xiao and the three Musanuans were up against Nether Maiden. They were similarly incapable of gaining the upper hand over Nether Maiden. She hadn't gone berserk like the pig-riding young woman, but Jin Xiao and the others had extremely vigilant expressions on their faces, while fear filled their eyes. Because Nether Maiden's attacks were very strange, especially her ability to reverse things. They really feared that. Bang! A long time passed before an explosion suddenly resounded from afar, and then a shrill cry arose. Yang Yi shot a glance towards the source of the shrill cry, and he saw that the pig-riding young woman's saber had struck the short man, who held an iron hammer in his grasp, to the point his bones and meridians had shattered. The reason for that was because he hadn't been able to retreat in time, so he had no choice but to go head-on against the pig-riding young woman's saber. His iron hammer was clearly not bad because it hadn't been broken after suffering an attack from the pig-riding young woman. However, the powerful force from the attack had shattered the insides of the short man's body. He was still alive, but he was crippled. Fool! Yang Yi cursed inwardly, and then he focused on the black-robed man. The pig-riding young woman's physical strength was extremely terrifying. Even he didn't dare go head-on against her physical strength. He'd collided once with her earlier, and he'd done so by locating the weak point in her attack instead of going head-on against it. But that short man had actually done that. So wasn't he courting death? After one of her opponents was removed from the battlefield, it became even easier for the pig-riding young woman. As for Lien Suyao and the others, it became even more strenuous. At this point in the battle, many of them were injured, even Lien Suyao. The pig-riding young woman was really too terrifying right now. No one could stop her stride, and all chose to evade. If Lien Suyao and the others were called geniuses that were one in a million, then the pig-riding young woman, Nether Maiden, and the others were monstrous geniuses that were one in a million. Actually, Lien Suyao and the others were really amazing for being able to accomplish this much. After all, even a few semi-deities would probably be unable to gain an advantage over Nether Maiden and the pig-riding young woman. At this moment, Lien Suyao and the others had started to fight desperately. They naturally couldn't retreat now, nor did they dare to, because once they did that, it would weaken their already weak morale. Moreover, if they retreated, they would be in danger if the pig-riding young woman refused to let them leave, because their speed couldn't compare to her. Fight! They had no choice but to fight. When someone is forced into a hopeless situation, they would fight with everything they had. Lien Suyao and the others were the same. They were fighting like they'd gone mad. Regardless of whether it was the pig-riding young woman, Lien Suyao, or the others, all of them were completely immersed in the battle. At this moment, Yang Yi had stopped paying attention to them, because the black-robed man's attacks were growing in strength and intensity. Time was of the essence. Regardless of whether it was Nether Maiden's battle, the pig-riding young woman's battle, or the battle between Yang Yi and the black-robed man, every second counted to them. Yang Yi held Heaven's gravestone tightly and stabbed it forward from time to time. Every single attack would counter the black-robed man's attack. Suddenly, when the black-robed man's right hand slapped down towards Yang Ye's chest while carrying black energy, Yang Ye's sword, which was about to stab the black-robed man's palm, had stopped. It immediately moved slightly to the side and stabbed by the palm. Because his sword hadn't stopped the black-robed man's attack, the black-robed man's palm struck Yang Ye's chest, and Yang Ye's sword stabbed the black-robed man's chest. Bang! Hiss! A muffled explosion resounded as Yang Yi was pushed over 1 kilometer back. Yang Yi stopped and glanced at the phantom shield. At this moment, it looked like a rock that had been struck by a hammer. Even though it hadn't shattered, it was covered in cracks and seemed like it would shatter from the slightest touch. Meanwhile, the black-robed man's chest was dyed red with blood. It wasn't Yang Ye's style to fight a battle passively and just suffer blows. So, he'd suddenly changed his attack at the critical moment and caught the black-robed man off guard. However, it was a pity that the black-robed man had dodged his attack at the last second. So it hadn't been able to pierce the black-robed man's heart. After all, if it had, it would have either killed or heavily injured the black-robed man. The black-robed man said, "You were on the defensive for so long just to complete that strike, right? Haha, you almost succeeded." Yang Yi withdrew the phantom shield and said, "Unfortunately, you were still able to dodge it." "It is unfortunate." The man slowly clenched his fists. "Now that you've missed that opportunity, you won't have another." As soon as he finished speaking, a strand of black energy seeped out from within him. More and more seeped out from him, and it only took an instant for him to be completely enveloped by it. After that, the black energy suddenly transformed into a ferocious-looking beast. It had quite a strange appearance. Its body was like a fish, yet its head was that of a tiger, and there was a sharp spike on its head. Yang Yi frowned once the beast appeared, because he felt a strand of indescribable fear. Meanwhile, Nether Maiden's voice came from afar. "Watch out, that's a soul beast. It specializes in devouring souls." "A soul beast that specializes in devouring souls?" Yang Yi had a solemn expression on his face. He was quite weak when it came to the soul, so he naturally didn't dare to act carelessly now. "Come on. Let me see how you destroy it with a single swing of your sword." As soon as the black-robed man finished speaking, the beast roared with fury, and then it pounced at Yang Yi. The beast was staring at Yang Yi while greed filled its eyes. Obviously, it really liked Yang Yi's soul. "Don't let it enter your body. Even deities can't stop it from devouring their soul once it enters their body." Nether Maiden's anxious voice came from afar. Moreover, she'd forcefully endured an attack from Xianxia and rushed off in Yang Yi's direction. "It has to enter the body?" Yang Yi, whose face was covered in a vigilant expression, was stunned when he heard her. "That fellow has to enter my body to eat my soul?" Meanwhile, the soul beast had arrived in front of Yang Yi. Everyone in the surroundings watched as Yang Yi launched a forward stab. The black-robed man immediately revealed a wisp of ridicule when he saw Yang Yi's reaction. If Yang Yi had profound energy, then Yang Yi's attack might have been able to be a slight obstruction to the soul beast when it was enhanced by profound energy and sword intent. However, just his physical strength couldn't stop it. A soul beast had a soul body, so ordinary techniques couldn't cause any harm to it. He hadn't intended to use the soul beast because his target was the hall masters of the Nether Pavilion. However, he was truly helpless against Yang Yi. If he didn't use the soul beast and allowed Yang Yi to keep him busy like this, then the situation would become even more disadvantageous to him. So he had no choice but to use a trump card. Yang Yi's sword stabbed forward, but the soul beast passed straight through his sword, and then it transformed into a ray of black light that entered Yang Yi's body. Yang Yi's eyes instantly opened wide. "No!" Nether Maiden's face was instantly covered in fury and ferocity, and then she raised her speed to its limits and charged forward in Yang Yi's direction. Meanwhile, the pig-riding young woman shot a glance over when she heard Nether Maiden's voice. She blinked when she saw the soul beast enter Yang Yi's body, and then she said, "That fellow was killed just like that." "Ha ha ha!" The black-robed man roared madly with laughter. "What a pity! How sad! You actually used an ordinary attack against a soul beast." "Yang Yi! Oh, Yang Yi! You're the stupidest person I've seen in the lower dimensions. Ha ha ha!